saying that he was asking me if I was posting these recordings on YouTube. And I said, no, I haven't even really thought about that. And he says, you might get some more people interested, if once they find you and to see what you guys are talking about on a regular basis and sharing, some knowledge and stuff like that. So might be something I might, look into, but I wanted to bounce it off of you guys too, because this is, you guys are as much of this as I am. So just to kind of, again, this is all about sharing and, having fun for an hour on a Sunday.
That sounds like a great idea. I think we definitely get more people and be like, who is this Moonshadow group?
Yeah, right. That's what he was saying too. And so yeah, I might check into that. Of course, as we already experienced with my, headset today. Good morning, Travis. As I already experienced with the headset, I'm not real tech savvy, but sometimes it's just a little glitchy, and we'll check into it. So let's get into this a little bit. So, we talk about protection, we've talked about ropes, we've talked about this and that and everything, but basically just getting, obviously, if you're 500 feet up on a wall, you're hanging on. You got your feet, you got your hands and everything, but those aren't always real dependable to keep you there. So you have to have something a way to anchor into the rock. This example right here just happens to be a bolt, an expansion bolt, and hanger that is clipped in, and just through the use of a quick draw sling, what have you. In this case, you can clip into your rope, which is tied into you, and keep yourself supported. And in the early days of climbing, this was the biggest thing going on. They they didn't have a lot of the I guess different types of alloys, and cam configurations, even stopper configurations. It really wasn't clean climbing. This was mostly just various sized pitons, smashed, just hammered into the rock, into the cracks. And you see all the different sizes of pitons here. Obviously getting ready to do a big wall, and Royal Robins, and you see all the carabiners and all the different shaped pitons, even the little knife blades right in front of Royal, got the various hammers down there. And this is kind of where Chouinard got his start, was forging these pieces. And he would do that during the week, and then on weekends come up to Yosemite and sell them and climb and everything else, and got pretty good at it. And then so that's kind of, you get a piton. This is sort of what it looks like. It's hammered into the rock. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever climbed and clipped into one, or even hammered one in anywhere. They're pretty bomber. When they go in, man, they're solid. You're in there. But basically it's a metal spike, usually steel. It's driven into the crack or a seam of a climbing surface with a climbing hammer. And then you can either belay, anchor, you can rappel off them. You can, use it as protection as you're climbing.
Kind of a sharp points inside it, like they are like hook.
No, it's just slid in. They just slide in and get, tapered to where it gets tighter and tighter the more they hammer it in. But one thing that's kind of bad about it is that, because they would take them out too. They'd take the hammer and they'd pull them out as they went by. And so it damaged the rock pretty good. It's kind of considered obsolete now, but they were damaging. So they realized that these routes, these classic routes especially, were getting, the more climbers would do them, the routes would be changing, because it's like, well, this used to be a really easy spot to climb, And now we've got so much of this spot chipped away. Now the handholds aren't very good anymore. And so it's actually the climb is harder, or vice versa, And, before it used to be a crack that I couldn't even get my fingers in, but now it's so chipped away that now you can get your fingers in it and made it easier. So it's, some of the climbers, the purists, Royal for sure, Chenard, a lot of these, they were trying to figure out ways of getting around and working on different ways of clean climbing and finding protection without damaging the rocks.
Sorry, Dave. Do you
Yeah.
leave them in there after you had done your climbing, or you remove them? And what is the way to remove them? Or if you leave them in there, are they okay next year because of the ice expansion and contraction and all that throughout the winter time? Can you maybe give me a word or two on that question?
Well, I think it's a really good question too, Tony. For the most part, they would try to remove them by banging around and sliding them back and forth and wiggling them out and so forth. The ones that you couldn't get out, that's a good point. You kind of wonder, how well they were going to, withstand the winter time. I have come across on certain routes a fixed piton that no one has ever gotten out, and they may have been up there for 50 years now. So now obviously there's steel, you got corrosion and rust and things like that, so it's degrading it. Whenever you do see one, you kind of look at it like, okay, if it's the only thing I have to clip into, maybe I might clip into it, but I'm not going to really totally trust it. So just kind of keep that in mind, that the ones that you come across that are fixed, probably not the best to clip into. But yeah, that's a really very good point, though. That's a very good point. So
yeah, because the question is, are they still reliable next year or a year after? To kind of provide that obviously security there, that they will hold your weight and whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Can I jump in on that one?
What's that?
Can I jump in on that one?
Yes, absolutely, sure.
I think, Tony, the big thing is pitons they're very outdated now, but bolts are the same way, because with weather changes, expansion, ice, water, everything like that, bolts can get looser and looser. And I've been on more climbs that I've had spinning bolts. I've had more climbs that have bolts sticking out a good 1.5 inches from the rock face, and the plate isn't flush against it. So that does happen. Let me rephrase that. One of the big rules in climbing is always check your anchors and make sure it's secure. And you do have to check everything, and that's for everything. So bolts weren't designed to live in the rock and be there forever. Pardon me. Pitons were not designed to live in the rock and be in there forever. They were designed to be taken out. That's why they were tapered, so they could eventually come out if needed. Bolts are supposed to be in there forever, but they also work their way out, which makes them also a dangerous thing because of expansion and contraction and all sorts of other things. Sorry.
Yeah. And just kind of elaborate on that. Now the bolts and hangers have gotten way better over the last, several decades. They, some of the original bolts, that you'd see from, like 70s and 80s and stuff like that, you come back and boy, these things are all rusted. Even the bolt itself looks like it's worn through and everything. And yet, there it is. What do you do with that? Do you clip into it and look for another place, or do you bypass it? Or, but a lot of the ones that they're putting in now are all these, very, very strong, very nice alloys. They've got a lot of times they'll put a sealant in there to kind of help weatherproof that out. Hey, Michael, good morning, and that sort of thing too. So, yeah, this would be great. I think Michael might even have some input on bolts and hangers and stuff like that, and old ones and what have you. But all right, so moving on to stoppers. Can you guys see these shots? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you got long come stoppers, and this was sort of a lot of these examples here are going to sort of be second generation stoppers. They're all on wired cables. The first ones were just have Perlon through them. I've still got some old stoppers that various size Perlons. The bigger ones you can get 7 or 8 millimeter Perlon through it, but you get some of the smaller ones. Like most of these right here, they would be on, oh my gosh, maybe maybe 4 mil or something like that, if you're lucky. And but you can kind of see how they get wedged in the cracks. And then this became a little bit more free climbing, freestyle, less damaging to the rock. Now it's after time, they still kind of get in there and you get some of these that are fixed and so forth.
Dave, do you
Yes.
still do freestyle rock climbing of the El Capitan? Do you still do that a few times per season?
Me? Yeah. No, I've done it. I haven't done it. Most of I've never done over multi-day climb. It's mostly just single day stuff. And but Michael, can you hear me? I don't know if you guys are Patty or not. Who is there?
Yeah, I hear you. I obviously did not click the microphone or the camera buttons when I logged, and I just sort of like, well, I don't know what I'm doing.
I know we've already had some glitches this morning too with my sound and so forth, but there you go. Okay, now I see you.
I'll turn that headlight off.
Oh, you're good.
There.
And look at this group. Good morning, Janice. I think she's trying to join us as well. I think she had some problems last time trying to get in and everything, but
Just like me, her microphone's turned off. Oh, there it is.
I just woke up. Sorry.
good. Well, we're all here. All right, we can do this. But no, we're just starting to get into talking about how obsolete pitons are and that style of climbing and that sort of thing. And to be honest with you, I mean, there's a lot of people out there, you don't see a whole lot of stoppers on their rear racks anymore either. It's all cams and all that's good, all that good stuff. But something to talk about. So, Michael, we were just talking about obsolete bolts and hangers, and how they, so I know back in the 70s and 80s, boy, you would come across some of these hangers and stuff, these bolts, and they'd be spinning and half wore through and rusted through, and they're pretty bad shape.
I lifted one of Royal's originals out of the CLSA by hand, just pulled it out, So.
Yeah, really?
You're right. Quarter inch and poorly placed. Well, those hangers could leverage those things out every time somebody weighted them.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, here's some examples of some stoppers, kind of the evolution of protection, getting into the rock from this point. Now, basically, you kind of want to size these things too. You look at basically the same protection point here with 3 different sizes. You've got a better situation in the middle than you do on the other 2 ends. One could wiggle themselves out, one could wedge themselves and never come out. I mean, you can kind of take a look at that a little bit. And again, there's really no substitute for actually going out and placing them and seeing how they fit and how they work. You can tell when one's set really well and one is iffy. And couple different techniques. You got the same size stopper, but you can place it in a couple different ways to different get in there.
Two figure-8 knots without a backup knot.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Julie Ellison
That's
with
not going to
Climbing
line
Magazine.
up. I don't know.
Here to
Sorry
talk
about the
to you
video,
about
guys.
placing and cleaning nuts. There are two great ways to practice placing and cleaning. One way is to follow a lot of trad. Not only do you get to practice cleaning, but you also get to see how a more experienced climber places gear. The other way is to do what we've done here, and that's come to the base of a crag. We found a crag that has lots of cracks and pods, and we can practice placing without any real risk. Nuts are known as passive protection because they have no moving parts. It basically works by geometry. The shape of the nut wedges into a crack. When I was learning to place gear, I learned the mnemonic Running Dogs Chase Squirrels, RDCS. And each of those letters stands for something to remember when you're placing gear. The R stands for rock quality. You want to check and make sure that the rock is really solid, that there are no loose flakes or blocks that could pull off easily if you were to fall. The D stands for direction of pull. So when we place gear, we want to place it so that it's in the direction of a fall if you were to fall, which is going to be mostly down and slightly out. The C stands for constriction. Especially with nuts, you want to find a nice constriction that the nut will wedge into, and the constriction actually will hold it in place. The S stands for surface contact. We want to have as much as possible, so here you can see that it's fully touching on both sides. So let's go over that. If I were to place a piece of gear, I've climbed up to my crack, so I'm going to place a nut. So I pull all my nuts off. I'm going to find one that I think is the right size. I'm going to slot it down into the constriction. So I like that placement. So I'm going to take it off. And then what you want to do is you want to set the nut. And to do that, you want to give it a nice sharp tug. So let's review RDCS. We know the rock quality is good. The direction of pull, mostly down, slightly out. Constriction is really solid. It's being held in place by that narrow area. And surface contact is good. It's being touched on both sides. So that's a really good placement. So now we're going to go over cleaning a nut. The biggest thing to do when you're cleaning nuts is to pay attention to how it went in and try and remove it the same way. So most of the time with nuts, we're slotting them downwards, so they're going to need an upward force to get them out of the crack. Sometimes you can get a nut out with just a simple upward tug. And other times, when nuts are really stuck or maybe they've caught a fall, we need to use a nut tool. It's really simple. It's pretty much the same thing. You want to create an upward force that'll push the nut out of its spot. So what you want to do is take the little end here and just give it a few taps and it comes right out.
All right. So obviously, so they're doing advertising for some artists, but how do you guys feel about kind of the videos? I mean, maybe we can grade her on how she did.
Nothing terribly wrong from what I saw. You have to balance that setting a nut with getting it out, but you don't want it to come out on its own either. So that's a trade-off that experience will tell.
Well, that's very good, really true too. I mean, unless you hate your second, your follower, and setting those to where they don't come out, And then, you know, you got to kind of watch that too. But yeah, that's a really good point. You just want it to be there when you need it and come out when you want it to come out too. And I think if you're experienced as a following or a second climber, you get pretty good at getting those things out. I mean, you get a chance to try. I mean, I did a lot of following in my early days of climbing. Obviously, you know, I'm not jump in and start leading stuff. And I feel like I got pretty good at taking pieces out. So
You made mention of it too. It's following is like the best way to learn how to place, because you learn how it went in, where it placed, and oh God, that came out way too easy. Maybe I won't place it like that when I do it. It makes a world of difference.
true. Exactly right. Exactly right. So now we get into cams, but cams now have been around for a long time. I don't know. Did Friends come out in late 70s, or is it like early 80s? I'm right in there.
Early 80s, I'd say,
Yeah.
guess.
Early 80s. That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
too. They've evolved quite a bit since then. They came out with just a stiff shaft, but now, you know, they get all kinds of different configurations. They're a lot more adaptive to cracks. So yeah, their evolution has
Do they have a serrated surface on the bow? A little bit serrated, or no need?
they just have sort of a groove on the outside of the cams, Tony, to where it just helped grip it a little bit better than if you had almost like a tread on a tire versus a ball tire. Will actually, you know, grab into the rock a little bit better and cam itself into there. And they're spring loaded. They'll just kind of sit in there. Now, one thing they will do is, if you're not careful about them, they will walk by wiggling them. They'll kind of find themselves. But I think an experienced place setter can help avoid with that. There's ways of techniques to kind of, there's a whole technique on setting cams as well as there would be, whether it's a stopper or tri-cam or whatever type of pieces that you're going to be using. But and obviously they come in quite a few different sizes now. I mean, they get some massive, big old monster ones. You just protect yourself in a chimney almost now. But and then all the way down really small. So this kind of gives you things to watch for. This is pretty parallel crack right here. One's, although I don't know, the one on the left looks pretty decent to me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'd agree.
yeah, I wouldn't have that much of a problem with that one. The other one would be, boy, you might be looking at losing that cam. And get up in
That's
there.
not coming out.
Yeah, that one might be tough to get back out. Just having no way to really compress your cams to get that out of there, especially if it does a little walking and gets in even tighter.
And it's got less holding
to-
force as well.
Mhm.
It can be
When it's
it
cammed
can
out
be
like that.
stuck there, but it can have less leverage on those cams, so it's actually less holding force.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, I could see that. So the parallel crack, that one's pretty good, but that one's almost a little big. It looks like to me,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it'd be okay. Yeah, flaring crack. Kind of to a point, you have to kind of watch that. It sound like it.
By its very nature, crack climbing often provides ample natural protection. In this episode, we're going to give you some top tips on how to place wires and friends when climbing cracks.
first principle to look at when protecting any sort of size of crack is to actually have a look at your crack, see what sort of size it is, and then make an appropriate selection on your harness to protect that size. So with that in mind, I'll select for my protection a range of small nuts for the bottom of the pin scars, a set of medium nuts, and then some larger nuts here as well that will cover me all the way up to thin hands. And on this side of the harness, I've got friends that will cover me right up from the micros, which will take me into the finger size, and up to the friend 2, about the same size as thin hand jam. So I know that I need nothing extra to take up, and anything extra in terms of size will just be wasted effort. What I'm going to demonstrate here is my top 2 tips for protecting finger cracks. My first tip is when you're in a crack and you've got 2 good finger locks and you place here, the real temptation is for you to place a bit of gear above your head. It feels more secure and you know that you're going to take a smaller fall. So normally you do that, select your gear, you be in your finger locks, and you place that protection above your head, and immediately you can see that the first carabiner blocks our first finger jamming placement and the second one lies in that other finger jamming placement. If you then factor in the rope as well, this will lie down up through the carabiner and down, blocking even more of the crack. So my first tip really for this would be to not place the nut high and actually place all of your nuts on finger cracks just a little bit lower, probably I'd say from chest level or below. So if I looked across my chest level, immediately obvious, really nice placement there. Slots in, my hands are above that placement, nothing gets in the way, it doesn't obscure. I'm only going to take perhaps a 2-foot fall longer on this, and the climbing is going to feel a lot easier this way. My second tip would be that if you do want to place protection above your head, try not to block your handhold. So first of all here, we've got a really nice finger jam, but if we place a fairly mid-sized nut into it, which is good, you can see that we're not able to place our fingers into that jam anymore. However, if I'm to use a really small nut at the back of the crack, then I can actually keep this right out of the way of my finger jam and I'm still able to use that with just as much efficiency. So I place that nut right at the back there, I can still slip my fingers perfectly into that finger jam. With placing a friend in a crack, you need to be really careful with the angle of the stem, particularly in the UK where the cracks aren't always uniform inside. So if we see on here, if we place this in at a 90-degree angle that you often see people doing at the crag, this means that when you load the friend during a fall, the stem will rotate downwards and cause that friend to walk inwards. Often it will hold, but if you look right inside, these inner cams have actually opened right out. So when you're placing a friend, think very carefully about the angle at which it's going to be loaded at. When I place a friend ideally in a crack, I'm going to be lining that stem up right in the angle of the fall, right from the outset. I know that's good to go. With the placement of smaller friends and microcams, you really have to be a little bit more careful how you place them in the crack. Often the temptation is just to fire them into the crack, going in perpendicular and just in a brush when you're a little bit gripped, really pumped. But this doesn't work quite so well because the smaller friends really need some care with how they're placed in the crack, and you really have to just work on how you seat them. So the better way, rather than placing that horizontal and like that, is to insert the friend into the crack in the direction that you think the friend's going to get loaded in if you fall off the route. So we put it in at roughly 45 degrees to the crack, seating it in nice and deep, all 4 cams are engaged, not over cammed but not under cammed. And then once that's in, I tend to grab the loop on the cam, move it around a little bit, give it a tug, make sure it's seated, and then we're good to go. When you're placing big friends in cracks, there's probably 2 main things you want to consider. The first is that you can move them around in the crack a lot more than you think. So when I place my number 5 friend in here, it's quite often normal for me to actually then push it into the crack a little bit deeper, and you can really kind of find the sweet spot within the crack, and you know that it's good to go in there. So the second thing to note on big friends is that when you place them in the cracks, they've actually got a lot more play in terms of the angles which you can put them into the cracks. When you put a normal sized friend in, you want it to have it really deeply cammed in at that perfect angle. But with these big friends, you can allow them to get right out onto the edges of their limits, and they're perfectly stable. And in fact, I've fallen off on many cams like this.
Join us for the next episode of Wild Country Crack School, when we'll look at how to protect your hands by taping up.
Any thoughts on that?
Oh, that last placement was pretty tipped out. I am
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. I've fallen many times on things like that, he says, but if you walk that at least a little bit, you're only on 2 cams.
Yeah, that's true.
That
Yeah,
seems sketchy as hell.
agree with you, Michael. I think that's kind of walking a fine line there. Yeah. But he had some good points about, as far as a lot of times your best placement is a really good handhold. And so, what's going to be more important at that? Well, it might be to get a piece of protection in, but then as soon as you turn around and start climbing, now all of a sudden that thing just went up 2 or 3 grades, because you have no handhold or something right there. So it's something to kind of keep in mind with that too. But I thought that was an interesting point. Yeah. So yeah, let's get. So we've talked a little bit about bolts in, sport routes, things like that. That's what you're kind of depending on a lot of, and we talked about the quality of bolts. How long have they been there? How well were they set? You don't know who set those. How much the care they took, or how experienced they are to do them. But it's something to keep in mind on that. Kind of roughly, this is basically what we're looking at as sort of a more modern expansion bolt. Fine. And then we get on to our carabiners, which have also evolved. I mean, you saw that first shot of Royal. He's got all these ovals. Basically, that was it. Well, I don't even see an oval in here. Kind of, sort of right there in the center, but definitely not one with a steel gate across it. But yeah, a lot of different thoughts, ideas. Carson gave me a lot of interesting points, not only on the shape of the carabiners one time, but he was talking about how the gate closure is, for hanging up on slings, and if you need something to get out of a sling and you're kind of precarious, you could be really cussing your carabiner if it keeps hanging up on the hook. Just things to kind of keep in mind on the, and then obviously the locking carabiners, auto locking, a lot of different types going on there.
I'd like to say something about one should be very, very, very reluctant to ever put 2 carabiners in a row. Use a sling, and never ever put 3 carabiners in a row. It's
You mean like carabiner to carabiner?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, Lincoln.
How to Not, that website I sent you, David, has an interesting thing on showing how easy carabiners like that can just completely unhook themselves.
Oh yeah, but kind of a twisting.
Yep, and it's shocking how easy it happens.
Yeah, okay. That's a very good point. That's true. Yeah, very, very good point. I kind of forget about that. I mean, maybe it's just after years, it just becomes second nature that you don't do that. Yeah, but that's a really good point to kind of remember that, how easy that is to have happen. Oh, that's really good. Really good. And then obviously we're just talking about a little bit back into the most personal piece of, climbing protection, which is going to be, the end of the rope. That's what's going to go right into your harness and stuff. We have another we have a segment on harnesses, I believe, coming up. Yeah. So actually, just kind of looking forward on our kind of our curriculum, I guess. We talk about, so next week we're going to get into a little bit more about belaying, leading seconds, that sort of thing, and then just bouldering, and then within that we're going to finish up on our last segment on climbing. We're going to talk about climbing ratings and stuff, and how to make sense of these numbers and letters that are thrown at us and stuff. And yeah, you see this guy's got a lot of carabiners, some quick draws in there. Looks like he's got a couple right up there at the very top that he's clipping right into the cams, right into the rope, without a sling.
Might be a purple sling there, but I agree with you. If there's not, he should not have that.
Yeah. I think the
There's
thing.
too many things that can fail. Too many things that can fail.
Yeah, it's even just a quick draw, something there. Yeah.
Yeah. Without that extra flexible link, though, anything can come out pretty easy.
Yeah, it kind of gets wiggled around there a bit. I love just critiquing other climbers and just saying, "Oh, hey, you're doing it wrong."
We weren't in the position he was in when he placed that gear, but at the same
right,
time.
right. It's like, come on, dude, take the extra minute to do that, right? And he's gripped, and he's got one foot that's just sewing machine himself right off the rock, or who knows. But all right, we got a little segment here on how to fall. I really never needed to watch a video to figure this one out, but there is a technique to it. There is a technique to it.
Everybody falls. As your skills progress and you start pushing into the next grade, you'll come off the wall now and then. While it's always scary, if you practice and stay calm, eventually falling will become a natural part of climbing. This video is going to cover managing the rope, checking in with your belayer, and the right way to come off the wall. If you fall, you want the rope to run straight to the last piece of protection without any part of your body in the way at all. It's super important to keep the rope between you and the rock. If it gets behind your leg or ankle and you take a fall, it will flip you upside down, you'll lose control, and bad things could happen. Sometimes, like when the rope is fully wrapped around your leg, it's pretty clear that you need to adjust it. But when you're traversing and the rope creeps over to the side, it's less obvious. Think about your trajectory if you were to fall, and make sure the rope is never in the way. If the rope does get behind your leg, take the time to reset or step around and get it in front of you. An easy way to tell if the rope is in a good position is to make sure it's running over the top of your toes. A few key phrases will help your partner anticipate your fall and could mean a shorter trip or a softer catch. When you're moving through a difficult section or you start feeling sketchy, tell your belayer,
"Watch me."
They'll keep a close eye on how much slack they pay out and will brace for your possible fall. If you do fall and you have the composure to call out,
"Falling,"
your belayer will lock off the rope and brace for impact. Screaming and cursing usually have a similar, if less dignified, effect. Now comes the fun part, taking the fall. You can break the fall into 3 parts: coming off the wall, falling, and landing. When you feel yourself peeling off the wall, yell "falling" and look down so you can see what's coming. Unless you see a ledge or other obstruction that you need to clear, don't be tempted to push off. If you do push off, you'll swing back in and smack the wall harder on the landing. Once you're in the air, breathe out to relax your body. Yelling counts too. Keep your legs bent and your arms at chest level with your elbows bent, ready to deal with the landing. Don't try to grab anything like a quick draw to catch your fall. You could seriously hurt yourself. Try to land soft against the wall. Let your legs act like shock absorbers to handle the impact. Falling happens, so get comfortable with it. Start with some falls on top rope, and when you feel ready, head to a steep or slightly overhanging crag for some lead fall practice. Climb up several bolts to make sure there's plenty of rope in the system, and with your knot at the bolt, take a few short falls. Then climb a couple feet above the bolt and fall again. Pretty soon, falling will lose its edge. To learn more, check out these videos or click here to find an REI class near you.
That could be fun.
So yeah, I thought that had some pretty good points to it. You know, you don't always get to pick and choose when you're gonna fall.
I choose not to fall.
Yeah, I choose not to fall. That's a good choice. But yeah, just always being cognizant of where your rope is going and where you're going to be going if you do come off. It's, you know, I was looking at this wall that they're on. I mean, boy, really rough, and looks like a lot of hand and footholds and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's pretty vertical, and the vertical walls like that are going to be a lot better to fall off of than, say, you've got something that, you know, at a 70-degree angle, and you're going to just be sliding and tumbling kind of thing. So you kind of have to look at that as, you know, kind of your angles a little bit. And she even mentioned that too, is find something that's vertical or even slightly overhanging. I mean, that would be ideal, but you get something like, you know, a lot of the routes and stuff that I've done are not really, you know, very steep angled, not super vertical. So you kind of do get that more of a slide type fall on them. But any thoughts on any of that there? Share?
Don't grab the rope like that one guy did. You know, I mean, really.
Yeah.
I'm
True.
sure.
Rope burns.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you got to be careful. Be careful what you're grabbing onto and what's going to happen because of it if you're successful at it. They mentioned not grabbing the sling as you go by it. Obvious reasons there.
I used to teach people how to lead climb, or actually trad climb, for a while, and in the process we'd always do mock leads. I'd have them on top rope belay, but I'd have it on a really, really loose belay, and I'd let them take the falls, and I'd still be there to catch them if for some reason their placement didn't hold or whatever case was. It was a great way for them to experience what a trad fall felt like.
Yeah. Now, Travis, talk to me about that. So you'd have them on a.
They'd be on two different ropes, so they'd be on a full-fledged top rope belay, and it worked out really nice because they were secure. But then I'd have them mock leading up, and they'd be placing gear and still having the belay coming up to them. But it would allow them to then fall on the protection, so they felt this. So they'd have probably an extra 10, let's say 5 feet of rope on their line of what I was fully top roping, belaying them from, and then they could take the fall on their mock lead.
Gotcha.
This is a great way to learn, because then you're seeing the actual placement. If it's really holding, and God forbid it's not holding, you still have you.
Yeah, you got it back up there. Really good point. Yeah.
I remember, if you allow me, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Old movie years back. Some of you guys, you know, would have been in that generation. Some not. It was an old movie acted by Roger Kennedy and Gregory Peck. They were rock climbing Geiger Mountain in Switzerland.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously it was a movie. It was, you know, kind of embellished things also because the wall all of a sudden got iced up and on and on and on. It was something fantastic. It got in but in a presented as a story in a movie. So it was good. I don't know. Have any one of you seen that movie? Would you remember it by any chance?
I'm trying to think. There was another one too, I thought, with Clint Eastwood that I don't. But it's been a long time ago.
The title of the movie, but that
The Eiger Sanction.
Yeah, exactly. Some old classics that'd be fun to actually go back and now, having some climbing experiences, I think last time I saw that I was a kid, obviously way before I ever climbed. You could critique some of that stuff, yeah. Any other thoughts on stuff? Man, we had a good group, and I want to thank again everybody for participating and joining us. And sorry I wasn't able to make it last week. Had some things pop up, but I think we're back on track. And
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah, sounds good. I know you're heading into the shop, I think, too. So you're gonna be meeting up with Travis a little bit. Yeah, thanks again, everybody. Michael, thank you. Your input is great. I appreciate it.
And
Tony, it's great to see you again.
real quick, Jan, sorry, Patty missed this episode. She's out riding her horse. Next time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to catch up with her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks again for participation, and hey, we'll see you we'll see you next Sunday, and enjoy the rest of your day. I think we're gonna have some nice weather this week. So,
Bye, folks.
Thanks, Dave.
all right.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah,
Thank you,
you
Dave.
got it. You got it. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
see
you,
you.
Tony.
Thank you.